and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. Justin Baker, co-host, as always, joining me as we talk about the biggest overreaction so far to the National Hockey League season. We're, what are we, like a week in? A little longer than a week?
2 weeks,
when did the season start? It started on the 8th, right? Yeah, I guess the 8th, 7th or 8th. Yeah, so we're 2 weeks in, and I got to say, there's some temptation for me to overreact. I know that you're overreacting about a few things. So we wanted to sit down, talk each other through this, figure out what is a true overreaction and what is something we should be worried about. So we've come up with a pretty good list of things that are going on, maybe things that were unexpected, and we're just going to talk through them. This will be like a therapy session for especially for our own individual teams, because I think our individual teams are doing maybe some unexpected things anyways, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Detroit Red Wings. But before we do that, Justin, how's the first couple weeks of the season going for you? Like, what has there been teams you've been trying to watch on purpose aside from the Wings?
Oh yeah, obviously the Red Wings, right? But to be quite honest, I've been trying to watch a lot of the Maple Leafs myself. Trying to watch them and the Ottawa Senators. I think those were two teams that I was most interested in outside of the Red Wings, at least in the Eastern Conference, to see what they were going to do this season to start. Because really, to me, we talked about it on our division preview. I think Toronto was going to run away with this division, and I thought Ottawa could potentially have a coach, get replaced mid-season. So they piqued my interest real early.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been kind of, it's really the first time in a while that I've been interested in watching the Blackhawks, and I've been taking note on a lot of their games, enjoying watching them. I have actually really loved watching the Vancouver Canucks, especially those first two games against Edmonton, and they've been entertaining. And I guess in terms of a team that I've purposely been trying to watch, I have been catching a little bit of Pittsburgh Penguins because I was curious about Erik Karlsson, and it's kind of going as I sort of expected. That what happened in San Jose that first year with Erik Karlsson, where there was definitely some growing pains early on. I think we're witnessing that, although seems like he's getting more comfortable more quickly, and I think that probably speaks to the unbelievable veteran talent that is still in Pittsburgh. But we'll get to more Pittsburgh as we go here. Shall we start knocking down this list, going through some of the things that are potential overreactions? I'm going to start with the Alex Ovechkin overreaction, because I think that with the record that is, of course, on the line, and everybody's been saying, oh well, Ovechkin, I mean, he's like automatic for 40 goals every year, no matter how old he turns, kind of thing. It just seems like nobody has any. He's already surpassed so many expectations that you're like, when can this even end? Well, so far we're 3 games into the regular season. He's got 1 assist, no goals, and my overreaction was Ovi won't even get 20 goals this year. Now maybe the more realistic is like, or the more reasonable is, well, maybe Ovi isn't a lock for 40 anymore. Maybe even that's an overreaction. Where are you at with that? Mine is Ovechkin's not even going to get 20 goals this year. That would blow people's minds if that were to happen.
Yeah, that would just be. You wonder if at 38 years old, right? If he only scored 20 or less goals this season.
Dude, he's only got 4 shots on goal.
That's the thing.
And those came in the first game.
I was going to say, this is the first time in his career where he's been held back-to-back games without any shots in his career. And this is the second longest drought to start a season without a goal, right? So, and
we're talking about 1,350 games. 2 of those in a row, he had never not gotten at least a shot on goal in one of those games. I mean,
it's wild.
And here we are. It took him literally 1,350 games to get to this point.
Yeah,
it's where are we at? I mean, the first 3. It still is the first 3 games. Is this more indicative of Ovechkin? Is it a Backstrom thing?
No, to be quite honest, I mean, so you look at his line combination, right? Obviously, yes, he's not playing with Backstrom. He's not playing with his normal partner, right? He's got Dylan Strome centering him, and he's got Matthew Phillips on the wing right now. He's had Tom Wilson up there too. But, again, I think Ovi's one of those guys where you're not looking for him to drive play 5-on-5, right? He's a guy where you're going to feed him an empty netter and you're going to feed him on the power play. That's what, at this stage in his career, that's what he's going to do. And I think guys are, I don't want to necessarily say maybe looking too hard, but you got to think with this record looming over the Washington Capitals and the fact that, they might not make the playoffs, those early season predictions that everybody has, right? Maybe they're just they're overthinking too much. They're like, let's try to feed him the puck whenever we can. And maybe it's just, sometimes you just overthink it and it just ends up backfiring on you. So maybe they just need to go out there and play hockey and just let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's probably a miracle that they've even won a game so far, because if you said, hey, the Capitals, Backstrom, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, between the three of those guys, they're going to have 1 point through 3 games. That's not a good place to be. And let's throw in Dylan Strome. He still has 0 points. There's not a whole lot going on offensively here for the Washington Capitals. Tom Wilson has 1 assist. Like, nobody is doing anything for this team, whether it be 5-on-5 or the power play. I am looking at this team first 3 games of the season. Boy, would I have a hard time not overreacting as a Capitals fan and thinking, man, we might not make the playoffs. I mean, that might be a nice way to say it. Like, we might not even be close. I mean, the Capitals could be out of it by November, and at November, you're expecting November's what, like 20, 28, 25 games or so, and you're expecting at that point where usually guys score more goals earlier in the season than later because of how hard it is to score later. You're probably hoping Ovi's got 10 goals by that point.
Hopefully.
And so far he's got 0. So is that how big? How much am I overreacting to? I don't think Ovechkin's even going to get 20 goals, which I did pick him in one of my fantasy leagues with my second round pick. So
oh man, okay. Well, okay. So let me put
a late second. I was the first overall pick, so it was the whatever it was, 17th pick or something like that.
Okay, so maybe let's put this on a scale 1 to 10, right? 10 being like it's a valid a valid reaction, and 1 being it's a complete overreaction, right? I might put this at a 3 or 4 right now.
Okay.
That it could be it's probably an overreaction, but there's still some validity behind it, right? And I mean, the nice thing for Ovi in the Caps is Ovi does very, very well against the Canadians historically, and they're playing them this weekend. He's had 64 points in 55 games, 37 goals. So he's fired up for this. I mean, he averages almost 5 shots a game against the Canadians. So I think he's licking his chops for this one. And if there's any time for him to break out of this little goal scoring slump, whatever you want to call it, it's the perfect game.
All right, we'll see. Next show, we'll see how many goals he has. Maybe that'll be our tracker. We're going to track his goals. All right, let's move on to one of yours that you threw out there. I think, based on this overreaction, I don't know if it's an overreaction so much as it's a bold, maybe more or less like a bold prediction, but you have Jack Hughes. I think you had him winning the Hart when we talked about it anyways, but you're thinking Jack Hughes wins the Hart right now. Is that how you're feeling?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, right, I say the overreaction for Jack Hughes to win the Hart because 1, he's in the top of the NHL as far as scoring is concerned, but I more or less look at it as the fact that you look at the normal names that you would expect at the top of this, this goal scoring list early on in the season, like Connor McDavid, right? McDavid's sitting at 6 points in 4 games, which is okay, but he's 15th on this list, and Jack Hughes is...
That's like 140 point season.
Yeah, but, again, there's a whole bunch of names ahead of him. I mean, even Brandon Hagel's got 6 points.
Was this 1993? Remember, 1993 is the year where a bunch of guys had 100 points, and there was several people with 60 goals, right?
Maybe it's that year.
Maybe it's the year where just a ton of guys. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, you look at the point totals right now. I mean, you've got Elias Pettersson with 8 points in 4 games. Same with Alex DeBrincat, Nylander, Rantanen, Draisaitl, Tavares, Malkin, all with 7 points in 4 games. Jack Hughes with 6 points in 3 games. So, I mean, he very well, if he continues that pace, he's up there tied with the other two, DeBrincat and Pettersson. It's things are looking good for the offensive game as long as you're not on the Washington Capitals. Everything's going really well. I don't think that it's necessarily an overreaction to could Jack Hughes win it? Like, sure, he could win it. It's just the heart is usually it's going to somebody who has an absolutely spectacular season all year long. Yeah, I don't know. It's entirely possible. I just don't. There's a lot of competition. That's how I'd put it. Is that there's a ton of competition, and it's just so early to say, well, this guy's going to win the Hart. But it's not a bad pick. You know, like if you were going to put money on it, it's not a bad pick. Only downside, something that could be weird, like if all things are even and you're going through and you're looking like, do I want Jack Hughes or do I want like Austin Matthews or any? You look at his face-off percentage and it's pretty rough. 31% there. That's no good. But
yeah, he's gonna have to fix that.
I will say, I think the better overreaction for Hart is Matthews going to steal his Hart back because he's already got. I mean, he's working the old Rick Nash. Remember when Rick Nash had like 42 goals and like 12 assists or something like that, and he won the Maurice Rocket Richard. I can't remember how many assists he had. You'll have to look that up. But right now, Matthews with 6 goals in 4 games. Here's a potential overreaction. Not to steal from the Jack Hughes, but I mean, does Austin Matthews score 50 goals in 50 games?
Oh, okay.
He almost had another one too. In Chicago, he would have had another one had it not been offside. I don't know.
By the way, Rick Nash, 41 goals, 16 assists for 57 points.
There we go.
And a minus 35.
There we go. They were on a great team. Well, that was the year that there was a three-headed monster for the Rocket. That was Kovalchuk and Iginla.
Yep.
41 goals. I think that's the lowest in a non-lockout year ever. Other than, was it Jamie Benn who was the lowest for the Art Ross?
Yeah, 84 points.
Yeah. So, anyways, back to our overreactions. Austin Matthews, 50 and 50. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you look at his current pace, right, that's not crazy to think so. But the problem is I at some point, right, you have to think, okay, is he gonna slow down right now? I mean, the team's been middle of the road right now, so who knows at some point if they start shaking it up because they're just not winning enough games. I don't know. Obviously, Boston's still sitting there at the top of this division, so. Does Sheldon Keefe get a little bit worried and start saying, hey, you know what, let's shake things up a little bit. Let's move Marner off this line or, stack it up with Nylander, Marner, and Matthews. Because, look, I've been looking at Tyler Bertuzzi, and he to me, going into the season was going to be the reason I thought Matthews could potentially put up 60 to 70 goals this season. But really, Tyler Bertuzzi really hasn't looked very comfortable, in my opinion, at least the short amount of time I've watched him on the ice with Matthews. And you know what? Everybody has to adjust, right? Going to a new team, and maybe after a couple of weeks he'll finally get he'll gel and get in there and really start generating offense like I think he can. But hell, 6 goals in 4 games. It's not out of the realm of possibilities to think he could potentially put up 6 or 50 and 50, just because, again, I think this Toronto team is going to be very dominant offensively. And so
they just haven't been so far, but
I mean, he's the one doing it, right? That top line. Yep. I mean, that core 4 is always going to be producing. And so there's no reason to think they won't continue that kind of dominance.
Yeah, the Leafs have 15 goals for, and Matthews has 6 of them in 4 games.
Right.
So it's pretty impressive. Right now, I mean, there's plenty of guys who right now are on a pace to do a 50 for 50. I've got Matthews, DeBrinket's at 5 goals in 4 games. So is Brock Besser, which, I mean, he scored 4 in 1 game. You have Brady Tkachuk, Trevor Moore, Joel Eriksson Ek, and Leon Draisaitl and Sam Reinhart all with 4 and 4. You've got David Pastrnak with 3 and 4, so he's more on the Matthews pace. Chris Kreider, Brian Rust. There's a lot of guys who have a goal per game right now, and obviously it's the safe bet to say every single one of them will fall off that pace because we have not seen 50 and 50 in a generation. So or 2 generations, really. When's the last time a 50 and 50s happened? Brett Hull? Did Brett Hull ever get 50 and 50?
No.
Oh, was it Gretzky? No, Lemieux.
Gotta look that one up.
Yeah,
I mean, we all thought that Connor McDavid could potentially pull it off last year. But
yeah. So the first one we know is Maurice Richard, and then Mike Bossy did it in 80-81. Gretzky did it in 81-82, 83-84, 84, and 85. When he did it, and he did 61 in 50 games twice, and then 53 in 50 games. Of course, he did 50 goals in like 39 games, which is just dumb. Lemieux did it once in 88-89, and Brett Hull did it twice in both his 70 or his 80 goal years. He did it in 90-91 and 91-92. He did him 52 in 50 games and 50 in 50.
Love it.
Yep, he technically had 50 goals in 49 games, and then he scored 2 more goals in the 50 games. So Lemieux did 40. It took him 46 games to get to 50. So, and of course, Gretzky did it 49, 42, and 39 games. So, but I mean, it would be pretty incredible if somebody else could do it. There actually has been other players who have done it. They just didn't do it in the first 50 games of the season, but they did it in their first 50 games of the season. Does that make sense? Like they were injured, right? So they did it. They did 50 and 50, just not 50 regular season games. The other players, Yari Curry did it in 84-85. He did 50. Yeah, he got 50 goals in, but it was game 53 technically. Alex McGillney did it in 92-93. Mario Lemieux also did it in 92-93. Not till game 72, though, because that was the year Mario Lemieux had Hodgkin's lymphoma and missed like 20 games and still led the league in goals. It's just amazing. Cam Neely did it in 93-94. He did it, and then Mario Lemieux did it again in 95-96. So, I mean, technically, Lemieux did it 3 times in his career as well as Gretzky. I feel like that's kind of a semantic thing. Like, well, it wasn't in the first technical 50 games. Okay, but it was still 50 and 50. Like if somebody scored 50 goals and at the end of the year they only played 50 games, I'd still say that's 50 and 50. I'm good with that.
Well, here's the thing. Here's why I don't think it's an overreaction with Austin Matthews either, because not many people remember, but the end of the 2021 season and the start of the 2022 season, technically Matthews got 50 goals in a 50-game span, but it was just broken up over 2 seasons.
That is true. Yep. So he certainly could do it. He scored at that pace before.
Yep.
Yes. Sorry, now I'm stuck on a Wikipedia page about 50 and 50, and I'm going to exit out of that, and we're going to get to our next overreaction. Okay. I think it would be the most fun goal-scoring thing to follow in a long, long time. Like, do you remember a few years ago when Evgeny Kuznetsov started off and he had like 25 and 25? And it was like, holy crap, can he do this? And then he just totally fell off, and I don't even think he scored 50 goals that whole year.
No.
I remember right. Okay. Let's talk Edmonton Oilers. Let's go to the depressing side of things where things aren't going as well. The Oilers are going to miss the playoffs. That's certainly the way that it looks like right now, doesn't it? Oilers are going to. They started the season 1-3. They've been outscored 17-11, and 5-on-5 they've just been atrocious. Connor McDavid is still doing his thing. Leon Draisaitl doing his thing. You know, like I know. I guess in a way you were kind of joking, like, well, McDavid is only at 6 points in 4 games, which is a 120 point pace, which is still, I mean, no one else has gotten 120 points in the last 20 years. So if he were to continue that pace, it would be just fine. Now, he's not on the Elias Pettersson 164 point pace. He's got to improve, but I don't think you're looking at this and going, wow, McDavid and Draisaitl are just bums this year.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, they're going to do their thing, right? I mean, regardless where Edmonton finishes, they're going to still, I think these two guys are still going to put up over 100 points.
Easily, like in his sleep.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say, and it's not an overreaction to say that Leon Draisaitl will be the next highest paid player in the NHL. Maybe not by much over Austin Matthews, I don't think, but I think he'll still eclipse that a little bit. Yeah. And then McDavid will literally do it 2 days later. But
it's true.
But you know what? If you look at this team, I mean, we looked at Edmonton last season and we saw how dominant they were after that Matthias Ekholm trade. Defensively, they were just so good.
Or they were just so much better than they had been.
Yes.
I think they were just so inept at times defensively that when he came in, it was like, oh, thank God we have him back there.
Yeah, that's a fair way to put it, right? And so, I mean, gosh, you look at what they're doing now, and it's honestly just a shell of what they were last season. And they were getting good goaltending out of Stuart Skinner, not playing very good this season. Jack Campbell, to me, he has not been the issue at all. I mean, granted, yes, he's his numbers might not look great, but when I watch him play, he hasn't been the problem for this team, in my opinion. They just look gassed. They look like there's absolutely no hustle, and they don't have any drive out there. I mean, outside of Connor McDavid, he'll turn it on like he always does just every once in a while. But, I just look at this team and they look like they don't have any reason to play. Like they're like, we're going to rope-a-dope people for a while and then we'll turn it on after game 20 and then just torch everybody.
What is it about this team that seems to always do that? 2 years ago it was like, man, are the Oilers going to make the playoffs? And last year it was, the Oilers are kind of, they're like middle of the pack. And then they roared at the end. But this team just cannot seem to get off to a good start. No consistency at all. I mean, they're consistently inconsistent. I mean, if you want to put it that way, but I look at their goal differential, right? It's one of the worst in the NHL. Sitting fifth worst. And honestly,
right now.
That's probably not something that's going to continue.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I do think they'll get it corrected. I mean, you look at the stats line, as far as goals for right now. I mean, yeah, they're sitting right in the middle of the pack, but I think they're gonna. I really don't know what to say about this team right now. It's so flabbergasting to see them to be so dominant last year, and you really talk about them being a Stanley Cup contender, and now I look at them and I'm like, man, they really look like they're not playing to make it in, to even get in the playoffs. Like they almost look like a team that's playing for last place right now.
Wow, I don't know that I'm willing to go that far, but and certainly Ekholm was out for the first. Was he out for the first couple games? Or is it just the
But
first
is one
game?
guy really
game, yeah.
that important to it? I mean, Connor McDavid, yes, but
yeah,
one guy going to make that big of a difference the way they play?
Should he be able to miss a game and it be okay? Yeah, I would say. I was thinking about this the other day. You remember, at this stage in Sidney Crosby's career, and not that McDavid and Crosby are the same thing, but just hear me out here. That at this stage, Crosby had some times where he had missed time. Right. And so had Malkin. And we saw how both those guys individually were able to take over, carry the team. I mean, Malkin literally won the Hart Trophy 1 year that Crosby didn't play when he was out with the terrible neck stuff. And this team hasn't really had to go through that. 26 years old. I know McDavid. He hurt himself in his very first year, his rookie season. He broke his clavicle or whatever and was out for the rest of the year. But I don't know that really counts because that team was not going to compete for a playoff spot anyways. And it was McDavid's rookie season. But since then, both guys have been healthy practically all the time. Barring whatever Draisaitl a couple years ago in the playoffs, he wasn't 100%, but he was still playing. And I I just wonder if there's so much reliance on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl that it has created some kind of atmosphere there where, hey, we expect them to kind of do it. And I don't know. It seems like there is. I'm not in the dressing room. I'm sure that those guys would say absolutely not. Like we try our best. We're a team, but I got to think somewhere in there is like, well, this guy's the best guy in the league. Like he'll be able to score us a goal. If I don't, it's okay. Whereas on other teams, it's like, well, if I don't, then no one else will, and that has got to either weigh on McDavid and Draisaitl, or maybe it's just alleviates too much pressure on the rest of the team. But really outside of the top six, once again, we find ourselves looking at a team that just is very underwhelming outside of their top six. I mean, hey, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, Draisaitl, and McDavid all have 6 points, or Draisaitl has 7. So they're all playing offensively. They're fine. But the rest of the team, like I was expecting a lot more out of Connor Brown. He's got 0 points so far through 4 games. He has not looked. He's looked out of place when he's played with McDavid. I thought it would be a great fit because he's such a hard worker. I thought that maybe he would be given the opportunity to kind of be like he's like a Swiss Army knife kind of player, right? Like throw him up in certain places and then he play well. He's still a good penalty killer, but Evander Kane's been quite terrible.
Garbage.
Actually. I knew that he was having a rough start, and then when I saw some notification that was like, oh, this guy in your fantasy league dropped Evander Kane, and then I went and I looked at how many people have dropped him in the last week or something like that, and where I was like, oh, like 700 people have dropped Evander Kane. That's that might be an overreaction. I don't know, depending on how many teams are in your league. But yeah, the Oilers look like they're not in a good place, but I don't know if I'm ready to say, oh, they're going to miss the playoffs because this is just a 3-game stretch.
Yeah, and the bigger concern for me, right, is like,
4.
Yes, when you have guys like McDavid and Draisaitl that can sometimes, chip in a goal to help, get you out of, you're down a couple goals, right, and you just need one. A guy like that can go out and create some offense and do something magical, right? But a lot of teams, they rely on goaltending, right, to get them out of it. So when McDavid and Draisaitl maybe aren't putting up 5 points a game like they normally do, you got to rely on goaltending maybe to bail you out, right? And so right now, Stuart Skinner is worst in the league as far as goals, wins above replacement, goals against expected, save percentage above expected. He's the worst in the league in all those categories. And I look at other guys down there towards the bottom who have had rough starts to the season, like Connor Hellebuyck, Freddie Anderson. These are guys in the past who I know have had a track record of success, so I'm not worried about them. But Stuart Skinner hasn't had that, so I worry if he can't rebound mentally, especially being such a young goaltender, they're in for a long season.
Yes, and we will definitely be keeping an eye out for that. One other thing, Darnell Nurse, pointless through the first 4 games.
Garbage.
That's a rough place to be if your your highest paid defenseman can't pick up a point in 4 games. I mean, that's rough. So that is something that is going to have to change. And Evan Bouchard's looked okay so far, but still making some silly mistakes. I know he's only 24, but at this stage, you want to see more out of Evan Bouchard, and especially given the responsibility that they're tossing him. So, and the way that he played in the playoffs last year too, you want to see him take that next step in the regular season. So, Oilers in a rough spot right now, but I'm sure we'll be able to turn it on at some point. So we'll label that one a pretty severe overreaction that they're going to miss the playoffs. Where do you want to go next?
Ooh, let's stay in the West and talk about the Seattle Kraken.
Okay. Yeah, the Seattle Kraken have, are they going to finish last in the league? Can you imagine that, like, last year was just a giant tease? Right now, 1 win through 5 games. They have played the most games out of any team in the division with the Vegas Golden Knights, but the Vegas Golden Knights are 5-0. 1-3-1. The Seattle Kraken, -7 goal differential. Last in the league. Make a case for how they'll finish last in the league.
Yeah, I mean, look, last year was such a great story to see, right? And I think now this year, you have teams coming in similar to Vegas, right? Their first year, they're a Cinderella story. They come out and nobody was expecting Vegas to do that. And I think similarly last year, nobody was expecting Seattle to make the playoffs because, again, the year before, you look at what they were doing. I mean, it was a 40-point bump in the standings almost, I think it was, as far as, their win record. So, again, teams are taking them serious now. Teams are onto them. And, yeah, they lost Brandon Tanev to injury, but, he's a fourth-line guy playing 9 minutes a night. So, what kind of effect is really that going to have? But you look at other guys on their team. I mean, Jared McCann, right, 40-goal scorer. He's only got 2 goals so far, which is okay, but
that's still a 40-goal season.
Yeah, it's still a 40-goal season, and yeah, he'll probably get pretty close to that. But again, nobody else is really scoring for this team. There's only 2 guys that have scored more than 2 goals, and that's Jared McCann and Jaden Schwartz, both only scoring 2. So they're not getting the same depth scoring that they were last year. Which was, again, the big reason for their success. I think if memory serves me correct, they finished 3rd best or 4th best in the league as far as goals for. So, and surprisingly, they're actually getting decent goaltending this year. Philip Grubauer is actually putting up a .909 save percentage right now, which is much, much better than last year. And if they had got this kind of goaltending last year from him, man, they would have probably finished close to the top of that division.
Right.
So, you know what? And maybe Joey Decord comes in and maybe he's their saving grace this season. They're Martin Jones, if you want to call it this year. But ultimately, the biggest concern I have is their lack of scoring. They're just not getting it depth-wise, which was, again, the biggest reason for their success. And, again, teams are taking them seriously. They're not going to sleep on Seattle anymore. And so if, this is a sign of things to come, I mean, I know we had a 7-goal, outburst, but if you look at their first 4 games, technically they only had 3 goals through 4 games.
Yeah, it's it hasn't looked good so far, but I would say for the Kraken, because there's a lot of depth scoring, there's certainly going to be times where you hit little droughts. You don't have those guys that can just go score at will. You don't have a superstar. I mean, Jared McCann, really nice shooter. He scores plenty of goals, and he's done it once. Maybe not 40 again, but maybe he's a 30-goal scorer. There just aren't a whole lot of those on this team, and that can be a problem. Beniers also has kind of struggled here. He definitely does. I guess, do we consider this his sophomore year? I mean, the first year he only played 10 games. I consider really last year as his first year. So, I mean,
well, he won the Calder.
Coming in maybe a little bit of a sophomore slump thus far. 5 games. I mean, last year he had 57 points, 24 goals in 80 games, and in the playoffs he had 7 points in 14 games. And now here he is 5 games in. He's got 1 point. He's a -5 as well. He has not looked as sharp, and I think, hey, expectations were low coming into last year. That can give you, hey, we can play a little freewheeling here. We can just enjoy ourselves and play, and we're playing with house money. Now there's pressure, and that can play a factor as well. But what I was going to say was that when you have a team that doesn't have that superstar, you are going to go in waves where you don't score, and I don't think this team is built to not score. Like, if they can't score, they're in big trouble. Whereas when you look across the country and you go to the New York Islanders, they're a team that also struggles to score. They've scored only 4 goals in their first 2 games, but hey, they have Sorokin. They've got one of the best defenses in the NHL. They've only allowed 2 goals in those 2 games, so they won them both. And I think that is really the monster difference, is that Seattle just does not have the ability to keep the puck out of their net. So if their goal scoring goes dry, they're in big trouble. And that didn't happen very often last season, but sort of in a way, it was only a matter of time where they were going to hit a slump where they couldn't score a goal because of the way that they're trying to score goals. Okay. Any other thoughts? Should we move on?
No, I like the point, though, with no superstar there to bail them out. So that's, when we talked about Edmonton, right? They've got the superstar power to bail them out of games, but Seattle doesn't. I
mean, that's exactly why the Islanders went and got a guy like Bo Horvat. Now, not that I'm willing to put him in the superstar category, but he certainly is somebody who can push the needle. And Seattle really did not go out and acquire anyone over the offseason that can push the needle at all. They didn't really change their team at all. And sometimes that can also have a negative impact on what happens the following year. It can just get stale. Especially when you're considering that this was just a team of, we'll say, ragtag bunch of guys that were just working hard to prove everybody wrong. Well, you can't prove everybody wrong when you've already proved everybody wrong once. So now the expectations are high. We're maybe seeing that this team isn't quite as good as some may have thought that they were last year. But hey, it's only 5 games into the season. That may be an overreaction, but I don't care. I like overreacting. Connor Bedard, what do you think of his start?
Not bad, actually. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, everybody's gunning for him when he gets on the ice, right? I mean, everybody expects him, to go out there and kind of dangle a little bit. And I think he's kind of getting used to the NHL. Obviously, there's a certain pace you need to play with, and he has no problem skating. He has no problem moving, dangling a little bit. But sometimes you have to. What's the word I like to keep? You have to keep it simple, stupid, right? Sometimes you just need to play the game, right? And play the game the right way. And I'm not saying he's playing the game wrong by any means, but I think again, because the expectations are so high for him, because he's branded this next big superstar. Sometimes he's going to go out there and try to do a little bit too much. But so far, overall, through 5 games, 3 points, I've liked what I've seen out of him. Obviously, I think he needs to get better in the faceoff dot, and he says that he's idolized Patrice Bergeron for so long, and who knows, maybe he eventually gets to that kind of defensive prowess in his game, but it's clearly not there, and he has some things he needs to work on. But again, he's a rookie. He's 18 years old, so. Sure. For what I expect in this league now, because you can't, it's so hard to walk into this league at 18 and dominate. I mean, even Connor McDavid came in at 18 and, didn't even put up a point per game. So, if Connor Bedard can put up
in a almost a different era though, in terms of goal scoring, for
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. But again, I think players nowadays, they're used to this style of play. They're used to it being a little bit more run and gun and, higher scoring games, that kind of thing. And so, he's obviously going to get his chances because of that. But, really what it all comes down to is, he's also got to have someone to dish him the puck too. And so, yes, he's got Taylor Hall, who's been injured a couple games. And so we'll see if that makes a difference as they can finally get settled in and maybe start gelling. But, what, so far, I have no complaints out of this guy because my expectations were not like, oh, he's got to get 80 or 100 points this year. I thought, if he gets between 50 and 60, that's a success to me.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that they were playing him a little bit too much. He played his first 3 games, 21-29, 21-44, and 23-02. That's a lot for a rookie to be playing. A rookie forward to play over 23 minutes in a game. That's a ton. And then the next,
but I like that.
The next 4 games, he was at 18-35, or next 2 games, 18-35, 19-37, in which he was held pointless. So maybe there's something to that. I don't know. I don't like it because I think that I think you're putting him probably in too many situations too early. I think that there's got to be some. I don't know. There's got to be a way to you limit his minutes. You put him into the right situations, and I guess that assumes if you're trying to win games. If you're just trying to load him up and like put him out there all the time, then yeah, fair enough. But I don't think that it's good for a rookie, and no matter how good he is, to be playing 23 minutes in a night. That's just too many, in my opinion.
I love it. I watched Leo Carlsson last night with the Anaheim Ducks, right? And they did the exact same thing. They put him out there for 20 minutes a game. They have him on that top line with Troy Terry and Zegras, and I think that's beautiful because I want to see young guys like that go out, learn the game the right way, make mistakes. And the great thing is I think with, Chicago even better than Anaheim has, Chicago's got a lot of veteran guys like Corey Perry, Nick Foligno who have been there, guys who have won. Even Taylor Hall, who's got a Hart Trophy, so he knows what it takes to carry a team. Be those mentors and those guys that, when Connor Bedard does make those mistakes, maybe being out there too long, not coming off, taking those 1.5-minute shifts when he should be doing 45-second shifts, that kind of stuff. Really, just saying, hey, kid, you know what? Try this, or maybe you should do this, and help him develop his game a little bit quicker, I think.
Okay. All right. So I guess, yeah, so the theory is play him more so that his game develops more quickly. I don't.
That would be my thought process.
I don't hate it. I just think that there's something to be said about playing. Now, I know this is maybe not going to age well, but Mike Babcock with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, you remember there was a lot of there were some like it was like, no, Matthews is going to play his 16, 17 minutes a game, and that I was like, well, that seems a little low. But his thought was like, I want these guys to earn it, but B, I want these to and Matthews wasn't playing the power play his rookie year. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's wild.
What a dick! He didn't put Matthews on the power play.
We got this guy with the best wrister in the world. I mean, we're not going to put him on the power play.
That should have been, other people who were going for that Blue Jackets job when the idea of Babcock was out there. So somebody should have just said, dude, he didn't even put Matthews in the power play.
I mean, I get it. Hindsight is 50-50, but Austin Matthews was still killing it his rookie year. I mean,
he scored 42 goals his rookie year. Not playing on the power play.
Wait, I got to look this.
Playing on PP2.
40 goals his rookie year. Only 8 power play goals.
There you go.
Only 8.
There you go. Yeah, imagine if he had been on PP1, he probably scores 55.
He's a 50 goal.
Maybe Lou Lamoriello was like, we can't have this guy scoring 60 his rookie year. He'll cost us $1 million. He'll cost us billions.
Oh my gosh, that's again just you know what? Again, if you've got nothing to lose like Chicago does, like Anaheim does, right? You're not playing to get into the playoffs. You know you're not going to make it. Just give them 20 minutes a game and see what happens.
I just don't want a young guy to be so taxed that you're going to get him hurt because he's. I guess it's like you said, the pace is different in the NHL. So yeah, you got to adjust a little bit to the pace. Keeping that pace for 23 minutes a night in your very third game is going to be really hard. And I like when a coach is also careful and manages a player because of course, yeah, put your best players out there for the longest. You don't have anybody else, put them out there. But it's, I think, more responsible to go, you know what? The best players, the best forwards in the league, they're not really playing that much. That often because it wears them down too quickly. Right now, does it matter? It's the beginning of the season, but what happens in game 20? What happens in game 30, game 60? You don't want your young player getting hurt and hurting his development. That's why I think you had Babcock saying, let's limit Matthews' minutes. I think that's why that you should be careful about how often a guy plays when they're really young, their bodies are still growing. There's a whole lot of things. And so that's my hesitation, but I understand the
hey, and I don't hate your approach either. I mean, it's it's.
I guess either way,
hindsight, right?
Either way, Chicago's going to lose more games than they win, right? But they've at least been. It's at least been fun to watch them. Unlike last year, that was just god awful. It was terrible. This is one that's not on our list, but I'm going to throw it out there. This has more to do with the NHL as a whole. The NHL finishes with their worst attendance on record that in the last, 20 years. That's my right now there's a whole bunch of teams that are really struggling to get people into the seats, and I wonder if not only is that okay, so what? Some teams don't have as many people coming to the games. I wonder if that affects the hockey revenue so much that the cap actually does not go up as much as we expect.
That would be interesting.
I'm scared. Right? The Leafs need the cap space. Actually, really, 26 teams need the cap space right now.
Yeah, you're not kidding. I mean, we talked about Seattle, right? I mean, needing a superstar player, but they only have $2 million in cap space, so they could use a few million to. Yeah, and Beniers is in a contract year too, but. Yeah, I agree with you. I think we need teams to get this extra cap space. But I mean, I don't have the figures in front of me, so I don't really know. As far as a league average attendance is concerned. But
the Capitals 682 game sellout streak, or whatever it was, just ended. The Winnipeg Jets had 11,000 something people at one of their last games, their last home game. And that's a Canadian team. It's not even a team that's competing with the NFL or something like that. and then of course there's always the Arizona Coyotes who are bring the average down automatically. But yeah, there's been quite a few teams I think that are struggling to get butts in the seats, and they'll say that it's because of football, and that's somewhat understandable. I got you on a Sunday, Sunday games. I understand. Saturday games, I don't know. Like, even if you've got college football on, Michigan's playing Nebraska, but I've got a ticket to the Red Wings game. I don't have any problem going to the Red Wings game and not watching the Michigan game. I got to think that there's enough people out there that would feel the same way. That a lot of these early college games, especially for the big teams, they're like auto wins for some of these bigger teams. So it's not as crucial to watch these early games because a lot of times they're against much lesser opponents. I don't know if the whole NFL thing is, I don't know how valid that is. I'm sure it is a little bit, but I'm wondering if the league needs to take a hard look and go, man, our ticket price is too high. Like, if you have 11,000 people in the stands in a Winnipeg Jets stadium, I mean that's not a team that or a market that has anything else to watch. There's nothing else. It's the Winnipeg Jets. So it's concerning.
Yeah, and the other big part too is we're a league that the NHL is they aim for Saturday nights, right? That's where they put a lot of their games on the weekends on Saturday nights. Like tonight, for example, we've only got 2 games going on a Friday freaking night. Right. We should have back-to-backs like the AHL does a lot on Fridays and Saturdays. I think teams should play a lot of those because, again, Fridays and Saturdays are the nights where people want to go out, they want to do shit, they want to go downtown, they want to spend money. And why isn't the NHL taking advantage of this, whether or not they think Friday nights they have to compete with the NBA or what have you, right? Obviously, Saturdays, you talked about it with college football. I do think, a lot of people there are a lot more diehard college football fans than there are NHL fans.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And so, for me, I'm a big U of M fan, right? And so you look at this time of the year, right? This is when they start getting into those rivalry games this time of the season. And so tomorrow night we've got Michigan and Michigan State. Even though I know Michigan State sucks, it's a huge rivalry game, so I'm going to watch it anyways. Yep. And that's the same with a lot of these
Plus, because it's very fun to see Michigan destroy Little Brother.
Absolutely.
Especially since there was like a 6 or 7 year span where they're like, we're not the Little Brother. We can't. We hate. You guys have been calling us that, and we're legit, and you're not. And now they're back.
Yeah, and so now the NHL has just been marketing towards Saturdays, and so now you have to compete with college football. Sundays you have to compete with the NFL.
Whereas if you sprinkled it during the week, maybe you have. Although the problem is also during the week is it's harder to get people to come to the games.
Right, absolutely.
But Friday now, you should be able to get people to the games on Friday night.
We should be, absolutely. We should have 10 games tonight, 10 games tomorrow, not 2 and 12. I mean, that's just, in my opinion, that's not how we should be operating.
Yeah, I would agree. And now I know that, later in the year when football's over and, it's just, or when there's only 2 or 4 teams playing each other, it's not as big of a deal because you just don't schedule games at the time of the Super Bowl, the time of the couple playoff games. But it's like pre-January. What do you do with some of those games? Mm-hmm. And you also don't want to play games later in the year either. But hey, the attendance thing is somewhat of an issue to me because the cap really needs to go up, and I think that has the potential to cause some issues with that. So it's worth keeping an eye out on. I don't think that Winnipeg is going to average 11,000 fans a game, but it is something to keep an eye out for. Frickin' inflation. All right. Let's go to the positives. The Red Wings, the Buffalo Sabres, and the Ottawa Senators. You said they'll all make the playoffs. However, the Sabres right now are 1-3. And sorry, on your list. Excuse me. The overreaction was, hey, they'll all make the playoffs. Well, let's just stick with Ottawa and Detroit right now. Since both of them are 3-1, they're both in a great spot. Both scoring a bunch of goals. They both scored 19 goals in 4 games. They're averaging almost 5 goals a game. What do you think about this one? How are you feeling 4 games in?
Oh, I mean, as a Red Wings fan, you're excited. You've watched DeBrincat and Larkin just develop that chemistry you were praying that they were going to have. Obviously, DeBrincat and Pettersson sitting at the top of the league as far as points are concerned. So that's a positive, right? But what's funny is you look at Buffalo and Ottawa, they've kind of flipped scripts traditionally, because Buffalo normally is a team that starts hot and then goes cold, and then they end up missing the playoffs. Whereas Ottawa starts slow, and then they get a little bit warm, and they're trying to push for the playoffs and ultimately falter. But so, the big question is it overreaction to say that all 3 of these teams will make the playoffs? Not really, in my opinion. I think just you look at the way that Florida and Tampa and, again, to some extent you could maybe throw, Toronto in there, that they're not playing as well as maybe they should to start the season. And so, these teams have been giving up a few more goals, per game than maybe they should be. Toronto, just again, we talked about their depth scoring is having trouble. So when these teams are struggling out of the gate, right, these wins have to go somewhere. And so, why not Ottawa and Detroit, right? They're coming out hot. They're playing well so far. And so, it's not crazy to think that if Ottawa and Detroit keep up this pace, they could potentially sneak into the playoffs, especially considering that, when we look at the other side of the East there, you've got New Jersey and New York and Pittsburgh all struggling in that division at 500. So, teams that, could potentially make the playoffs there, and, Philadelphia somehow is running, on top of that division. I don't know how that happened, but
the rebuild is over.
Right. So again, wins are coming from other
How has Carolina
places.
allowed 24 goals in 5 games?
Oh, yeah, that's another overreaction we could talk about too, but yeah, so and I think, Buffalo's too good not to get this figured out, similar to Edmonton. I think they're obviously not as good as Edmonton, but I think they're good enough to figure it out. They've got enough depth scoring and talent there to get it done. And, so at the end of the season, you could potentially see all 3 of these teams in the playoffs.
It sure looks like between Tampa, Florida, and Toronto, one of those teams is going to miss the playoffs. It's going to be, a matter of which one. I don't think it's going to be the Leafs. Gosh, I sure hope not. But it's been a rocky start to the year for those teams. Now, as far as the way the Red Wings have played, the way the Senators have played, and remember the Senators, Josh Norris just came back, scored 2 goals in his debut. He was great in that, and that's a huge boost for Ottawa, who was already playing well before Norris came back. They're
Right.
still without Shane Pinto. So if they can figure out a way to get him signed, this team is even more dangerous. They have another 6 weeks to sign Shane Pinto before they hit that little
December 1st.
Yep, that little blip there. And the Boston Bruins, they've won 11 in a row in the regular season, dating back to last year.
They're not stopping, man.
Dude, they're good. They're good. They've started the season 3-0, and man, they just don't look like they're going to slow down.
No, and that's the thing. We knew their defense was going to be good. We knew their goaltending was going to be good, right? And that's essentially what they've done. But when you look at Ottawa, that's what they're doing. I mean, Jake Sanderson looks like he's just taken a whole nother. He's taken it to a whole nother level. And so when you've got Chychrun, who can also, and we talked about Thomas Chabot, right? He was the only guy there for so long, and now Chychrun comes in. Sanderson looks phenomenal. Thomas Chabot now doesn't have to play 25 minutes a night. He's down a few minutes a game.
Hey, it's not a bad thing if Thomas Chabot has to become your second pairing defenseman.
Right. That's
not bad. That's not bad.
Ottawa's defense is playing great. They're getting good goaltending. I'd like to see Corpy play a little bit better, but he's not playing super terrible. And Anton Forsberg just looks phenomenal. So they could be legit. So it wouldn't be an overreaction for me to think that Ottawa gets in at least.
Yeah, for the Red Wings, I'll say yes. DeBrincat and Larkin seem to have nice chemistry together. Certainly things have gotten to a very hot start for them. That will not continue. Where are the goals going to come from when DeBrincat isn't scoring 5 goals, a goal every game kind of thing? That would be a concern, which was always the concern. It wasn't a concern. I don't think we looked at this team and went, oh man, DeBrincat's just not going to score any goals. No, of course. We knew that would be a really nice first line. and that it was always going to be, who else is going to score goals. And at some point, your offense is going to dry up on that top pairing, or the top unit, and they're going to have to find offense from somebody else. And the question is, where is it going to come from? Lucas Raymond, a couple points through 4. He's looked okay. That's going to be the question the rest of the year, is where's the offense going to come from when DeBrincat and Larkin don't score?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, which it's totally fine. It's a totally fair question. And also it's not a big deal because the Red Wings, I'd say they're still a year out from having the expectation of, like, we need to be a playoff team. Like, this is time's up. I think they still have some time. So, I mean, this is a team that looks like a bubble playoff team. If they can compete for a playoff spot, that's great. They don't have the firepower, I think, to continue this for 82 games, but I think they're going to have a lot of fun. And they are so far. They're scoring a lot of goals. They're a lot of fun to watch, which has not been the case for the last 6 years. So I'm happy for you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, they're the best power play unit in the NHL.
You don't have to be bored anymore.
Yeah, listen, top power play unit in the NHL. I mean, just above the Maple Leafs. They're clicking at 46%, and the Leafs second best at 33%. So that's going to slow down at some point, right? And so, like you mentioned,
that'd be pretty easy.
Yeah, that top unit to Brinkett, Perron, and Larkin are just clicking. And Gostisbehere looks great with Seider back there.
Well, Perron finally has a guy that can actually shoot that he can feed.
Right.
Like exactly. That was. I mean, David Perron is a power play monster. He finds those holes on the power play. So good at it. And now that he's got DeBrincat, I mean, DeBrincat can be his Tarasenko, which not a bad comp.
Not at all.
Pretty close.
And so here's the other thing too, right? So there's rumors with Patrick Kane might come on board in Detroit if they continue this kind of pace here, and they're in the mix. He might come on board because they want to. There's been that talk about maybe rediscover that line chemistry they had. But all that aside, the biggest concern I have for Detroit is, I think they're going to find ways to score goals. I think they're going to stay competitive as far as the offense is concerned. But when that defense starts running into troubles, when that goaltending starts, leaking a little bit more, right? Outside of, Mo Seider and Wallman, I'm a little concerned for their defensive ability on that second and third pair. So, that's where they could get in a little bit of trouble and ultimately falter the rest of the season.
Yeah, James Reimer's looked good so far. That's good news.
So far.
It's a great start for them. I hope it continues because it's a blast. I'd much rather the Red Wings be good than the Lightning at this point, just because it's a fun new team kind of coming in there. I would not be mad in the least bit. Hey, whatever, Bruins, you can take the division. Leafs finish 2, Wings finish 3. Let's have a 7-game series. Leafs Wings. That would it hasn't happened since 1993, and it would be a blast.
That's getting me a little chub right now. Let's go.
You're welcome. All right. How many? Well, let's see. Let's do one more. I think we're at. We're almost at an hour. So we'll do one more. One more overreaction. Do you want to pick one?
Yeah, let's go with Carolina finishing with a negative goal differential.
Whew. Okay. Well, so far, so good. 24 and 24. So they'll, if they continue on this pace, they will not do that. 3-2 at basically a 0 goal differential. Man, I don't know where their defense went. What is happening? I mean, they're not. It's not even close to the second worst team defensively. The next worst is Tampa at 20. At least Carolina's scoring a lot of goals. They've been fun to watch. They've been really fun to watch because of how many goals they're scoring. But it kind of looks like a team that where they're normally really well coached. Kind of looks like a team that has kind of taken their foot off the gas in terms of really hunkering down the way that you need to win in the playoffs, and they're just kind of going into, hey, let's try to win. We've got better offense now. Let's just try to win this offensively and not work quite as hard. And I mean, if you had told me to start the year, hey, Carolina's going to let in 5 goals a game to start the year, you'd be like, well, are they going to start off like 1-5? But here they are, 3-2. They're just fine. Yeah, I'd say it's just a matter of like just kind of reining it in a little bit for them. I don't think that they're going to finish with a negative goal differential. I think it'll be quite in the positive.
Yeah, so I guess you're already putting this as an overreaction, but I'll tell you what's an overreaction is Brady Shea leading the league and scoring for defensemen. I mean, my God, where has he come from? It's it's been great to watch, but when you talked about this defense just not looking good back there, I mean, you bring in essentially, Tony DeAngelo. We know he brings offense. He's not a defensive guy, right? So he's going to be your third line guy, probably on your second PP unit, and that's essentially what he's been doing, for this Carolina team. But you bring in Dmitry Orlov, who to me should be playing a lot higher than that third pairing, but it is what it is, and so we don't know who's coming back next year for this Carolina defense. And so when you're essentially bringing in a couple new guys to try to fit into a system that maybe they traditionally haven't really played in. I mean, let's face it, Orlov, before going to Boston, he really didn't play in a system anything like this or anything close to this. So, he seemed to fit in well with Boston last year, and I think he'll eventually get settled in. But, the thing that I wonder is, can we already write in Sebastian Aho as MVP? Because clearly he means so much to this team the way they're playing defensively right now. Just they're not controlling the puck. They're not dominating offensive possessions like they normally would have.
Yeah, MVP no, but we can certainly point to him and say, I mean, he is an important player on this team. I think the weird thing, and this is what I noticed. You mentioned Brady Shea. I also bring up Jacob Slavin, who has 5 points in 5 games. Now remember, his best season is 42 points. Right now, he's on pace for 82. He's also playing only 19:15 per game through the first 5 games, which is way off his career 22:45. Typically, like last season, he was playing about 22 minutes a game. The year before, 23:31. So I get it. There's other defensemen who can share some of the load, but he's playing far less. He's shooting the puck he's shooting the puck a ton. His shooting percentage is career 4.3%. He's at 16.7. That's not going to continue, but hey, he's putting up points, and I wonder if he just kind of got tired of people saying that he was a stay-at-home defenseman. He's maybe. Like, hey, all these other defensemen are putting up huge points. I want to take more of an offensive role. And, that's certainly looking a little bit like that so far. And, maybe he's looking ahead and he's going, if you're like Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, between those two guys, probably only one of them's going to stay. And then I'm up for an extension the same time that their contract's up. I'm not getting paid $5.3 million anymore. Like, he's a Matthias Ekholm style deal. I think when he signs his next deal, he's going to be hoping for, even if it's not a super long deal, he's probably going to be hoping for $8 to $9 million would be my guess for Slavin. And so if he can put up some bigger points, maybe that gets him some more money. Just a theory.
You could be onto something.
Does this all come down to goaltending though?
I really think it does.
What percentage are we tossing this on the goalies?
I mean, I'm gonna go 50% at least.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Freddie Anderson has obviously been quite bad. In 3 games, an .855 save percentage. I don't know. I don't even know what to do with that. There's not a team on earth that's going to win with those kind of numbers. So I mean, that's rough. But then Antti Ranta with an .818 save percentage. I don't care. Even teams that are just shelling goaltenders. Usually you don't have those poor stats between 2 different goalies. It sort of tells me that, yeah, maybe the goalies are not playing the best, but the rest of the team is obviously not, because there's, it's not like one guy's having a rough start. Both guys are having a rough start. It's kind of the same as Edmonton. Like, both guys are having kind of a rough start. Let's maybe put a little bit more responsibility onto the players in front of them, because we know that Frederik Andersen's a solid goalie. So is Antti Ranta, both solid goalies. So when you see them playing like this, it's definitely more concerning from a in front of them standpoint than their game itself, for me.
Yeah, and you got to wonder too. I mean, is it an overreaction to think that maybe they might have a short leash on potentially moving one of these defensemen, because they've got they've got a lot of young guys still, and other defensemen in the minors that they can bring up and play on that third line and move Orlov up. So, is it an overreaction to think that at some point here in the next few weeks, if they just haven't figured it out, that they're going to move, maybe a Brady Shea or Brett Pesce to bring in, a top six forward who can really control play and move the puck and maybe move the needle potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's no reason to think they can't score. They're scoring just fine, and they don't even have Svechnikov right now. So once he's back, I mean, I would think everything will be okay. He's not supposed to be out a super long time now, is he?
Not that I'm aware of. No, but I mean,
there's your top goal scorer that's out, but you're still managing to score 5 goals a game. I don't know that I'm trying to trade a defenseman for a top 6 forward.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe at some point you look and maybe a team like, oh gosh,
but maybe they just don't want to lose them for nothing, right? Like if you decide, hey, we can only sign one of these guys, and whoever isn't going to sign with us, we can't lose them for nothing because we want to stay competitive, then one of them is going to go. I also look forward and I just go, man, like, you've got Brent Burns for one more year. He's going to be 40 by the end of that deal. You're not thinking you're bringing him back. Would you rather have Brent Burns or Brady Shea or Brett Pesce? Like, what order are you putting those guys in? Because I might put Brent Burns third on that list.
Well, it depends on where you think your window is and, how much longer he can keep this up, right? So we know what Brent Burns does. He's got that clapper of a shot from the back, and he still skates fine. But you know what? I mean, similar to Ovechkin, eventually you got to think he's going to slow down a little bit at some point, right? So, if your window is a little bit more wide open, right, with Svechnikov and Aho signed long term, you think, okay, cool, we've got a large window here. Maybe moving on from a guy like Brent Burns, because you've got Tony DeAngelo, who you can still keep around as your offensive power play guy. Maybe you just look at it and say, well, shoot, I'd rather keep a guy like Brett Pesce around, who is going to be a solid defensive defenseman for at least another 6-7 years maybe, and you can get him signed long term and give him $7.5 million and let him play defense back there, because Brett Burns' game is going to fall off eventually. I mean,
sure.
Or if anything, in 2 years when he's 40, is he still going to be that guy anymore?
Right. Yeah, and Carolina doesn't have the same history of LTIRing guys. But yeah, I think as far as Carolina goes, because they're scoring so many goals at the same time, I think it'll be a lot easier for them to go, all right, we're scoring goals at a ridiculous pace. We need to like stop taking so many chances. We know we can score goals. We need to keep the puck out of our net. And I think that's something they could do.
They finished towards they were in the middle of the pack last year as far as goals for. So if they get in a situation where goals start drying up, right, Svechnikov's not coming back as quickly, if they're anything like last year, I mean, if they can't keep the puck out of the net and they get back to last year where they weren't scoring as many goals, it could be a long season for sure. Yeah,
it's I think they're too good. I mean, again, they allowed 24 goals. They're still second place in their division right now. They're going to be okay, but it is maybe not as much of a foregone conclusion that they will win this division. And with the way that
I did pick them third,
yes, you did. With the Rangers haven't looked great. The Islanders, well, they look like the Islanders. The Devils haven't looked that good. Like, a lot of teams have come out kind of flat. Like, teams that made the playoffs. What teams are in the bottom half of their division right now? I know it's super early, but you've got Florida, Toronto, New York, New Jersey, Winnipeg, and Seattle, Edmonton. That's 7 teams. That's almost half the playoff field is out of the playoffs right now to start the season. I know it's way too early, but maybe things are a-changing. Maybe some things are swinging more than we think. Now, at the same time, hey, it's 4 games. A lot happens in a 4-game stretch. Whereas if this was the middle of the season, we wouldn't even give a rip. But it is something to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, you can't make your way into the playoffs by Thanksgiving, but you can sure play your way out of the playoffs by Thanksgiving.
Very true. Tell that to the Florida Panthers and the St. Louis Blues, though.
That's true. I'll give you that.
But it's definitely outside of the norm. The norm for sure.
Right.
All right. Well, there are plenty of overreactions. We overreacted well, and yeah, that's. I'm trying to figure out what is happening here with this recording because I see. Weird. Sorry, I I looked at this recording to check how much time was on, and I was like, why is nothing moving? And I got scared for a second, but we're good. We're good.
Oh, goodness.
Good. All is good. But I did get scared there for a minute. I was like, well, there's an hour of my life I'll never get back. But no, we're good. It's moving through. Well, any final thoughts? Any like small overreactions you want to toss out there before we get out of here?
Small overreactions. Oh, maybe you could overreact and say that Aiden Hill's going to win the Vezina because voters tend to go with the teams that winning the most games, and if he's at the top of the W board at the end of the season, man, that might not be too far off. But
that's true. If they finish 82-0, then he'll definitely win the Vezina.
But I think that's a little bit of an overreaction right now. So
yeah, and Logan Thompson has looked pretty good as well. I think you'd probably look at it and. It's such a weird trophy because you have the what's the Jennings, which is the best save percentage in the league, right? Like,
yes,
you've got this trophy that's purely based on statistics, and then for some reason we base the Vezina purely based on statistics. Like, I don't know about you, but I know Linus Ullmark was good last year. But he was on like a classic historical team. That team was way bigger than Linus Ullmark was.
Oh, I agree with you.
And I think there were better goalies last year.
You know what would be great this year is if Ullmark maybe goes down with an injury, Swayman takes over, and then Swayman wins the Vezina this year.
Ah, there you go. And then Swayman becomes a free agent. Oh, boy. All right. Well, I'll say Austin Matthews gets 70 goals.
I love it.
What's he on pace right now for? He's on pace for 120 goals. So 70 isn't that far off.
I just want to see a 50-50 finally.
Yes, that would be cool. 50-50 and a 93-goal season.
Love it.
Love it. All right. That's our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. We will talk to you all soon. Have a great weekend.